Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Gyro Sean.
Oh, hello.
And yeah, today, as the title probably suggests, it's probably going to be something like Mewtwo and Mew GX best deck in format. That's what we're going to be talking about. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the Mewtwo and Mew deck style concept in many of its variations, and sort of break down not just for today, but future facing, why it is the best deck in format today, and what will probably need to be considered going into Cosmic Eclipse to stay that way, if it even can. Who knows? So, in terms of why Mewtwo and Mew is the best deck in format, I think it's pretty obvious after this last weekend with the Knoxville regionals. Mewtwo and Mew GX won another regional event. So, if you count the big events that have been an option for it to perform well in, it won Worlds, it won the Cologne regionals, it won Atlantic City regionals, and now it just won Knoxville regionals. 4 regional events in 3 months is massive. I don't think there's any doubt really that when you have a really good player like Azul or Tord or Danny piloting, or Henry piloting these decks, that they can have incredible success with this deck. So yeah, let's just jump into why that is, so you can sort of understand what it is that makes these decks so powerful, and what some of their weaknesses are, and how Cosmic Eclipse can either hurt or help them. So if we start with the strengths of Mewtwo and Mew, there's really just 2, but they're 2 pretty broad strengths that I think is, I would say that these 2 strengths are, generally speaking, the type of strength that leads to any deck being very good. The first one is versatility. I mean, the ability of Mewtwo and Mew Perfection to be able to copy any GX attack, whether it's in your bench or in your discard, that's inherent, that's built-in versatility, right? Like, you have all of these cards to choose from. So throughout any course of the game, you might, so long as you haven't bricked really, really hard, have the option to pick from a number of attacks for whatever the situation calls for, whether that's a Turbo Strike to put energy onto the bench, a Tag Purge to prevent your opponent from getting any damage in, or a crazy Charizard GX, Flare Blitz I believe it's called, for 300 with only 4 energy, right? It doesn't really matter. In many instances, you can find an attack that's going to do what you need it to do. Venom Shot to grab something on the bench for 2 prizes, like a Dedenne. So that versatility, I think, makes this deck something that, and if you watch the Knoxville regional stream, is the most recent one, there was a moment during the stream where they were like, okay, he attached another Psychic Energy, maybe he's just going to Lava Flow with Mad Cargo, or use Flare Blitz for 300 to take out this Dedenne or Pikachu, and not Pikachu and Zekrom, or Raichu. But what they actually did is, because they had a lot of damage on both of their Mewtwo and Mews, they're like, if I don't heal this damage, I'm losing. So Danny correctly used Magical Miracle. It didn't even use one of the attacks on the Pokemon that he had in his discard. He used Magical Miracle to heal all the damage from all of his Mewtwo's and put 200 damage counters on his opponent. I mean, that's versatility right there. That's like, you have so many options at your disposal. That is what makes probably any deck really good. That's why I was surprised when things like Green's Reshazard and Guardian have success, because they're really not very versatile decks. So they're really relying on control. They're almost like weird control decks in a sense. So versatility, though, I think long-term leads to more success than control does. Not to say that control is not good. Pidgeotto control is a great example of that. But so that's the first strength. The second strength of this deck, and I think most decks in the format that are good, is energy acceleration. And the benefit that Mewtwo and Mew has when it comes to energy acceleration is its energy acceleration can come from 2 very specific places. Obviously, you have the Welder engine, which accelerates 2 energy and lets you draw 3 cards. So it's not only energy, but draw support, all put into one. Welder is broken. But the other energy acceleration is Turbo Strike with Solgaleo to a benched Pokemon. So you could Welder, attach, Turbo Strike, and then all within 1 turn, you've gotten 5 energy on the board. That's incredible. You don't need Tapu Koko to do any of that nonsense. You don't need Naganadels. It's just your attack, the nature of your attack, right? I think that level of energy acceleration allows you to set yourself up for situations where you're like, this Mewtwo Mew is going down. Nothing I can do about that. But I can set something up on the bench so that when my opponent does decide to knock me out, I can take a knockout the next turn. That kind of energy acceleration, I think, really makes this deck unique in the format. Like Pikachu and Zekrom has the ability to attach from the deck for its attack for 150, which is very good. 3 energy attachment is very good. And Dialga, Palkia, and Arceus GX is going to do the same thing. But, you know, those decks are good for that reason. But I just think Mewtwo and Mew's doing it from the discard to a bench Pokemon is very, very good for a card that was not really considered to be allowed to do that. Like with Pikachu and Zekrom, you know that Lightning doesn't have other acceleration. With the Arceus, Palkia, Dialga, you're playing water and metal. There's not a lot of energy acceleration out there already for that energy type. But Welder plus Turbo Strike, that's a powerful combination. So I think in a nutshell, those are the strengths in broad strokes, versatility, and energy acceleration. If you can build a deck that has 2 of those things in spades, you're going to do well. So let's talk about the weaknesses of Mewtwo and Mew, and then we'll get into what the future really holds for this deck. So the first weakness is going to be its reliance on abilities. I mean, its versatility comes from its ability perfection. If you can take away that Pokemon's ability, Pokemon can't really do anything unless it wants to try to use its GX attack, which isn't always an option because you need 2 psychic energy on it. So it's very ability reliant. Not only is it ability reliant for Mewtwo and Mew, but it's ability reliant for Dedenne as well. Which brings me to the second weakness, is that it is Dedenne reliant. Yes, you want to get cards into the discard, right? But oftentimes with Dedenne, you're getting a couple of cards that you want in the discard, and a couple of cards that you're like, I gotta live with the fact that I don't have these anymore, because it's more useful to draw through your deck, right? But again, Dedenne reliance means you have liability sitting on your bench. So, you know, I've had games against Mewtwo and Mew at the Atlantic City Regionals where I only needed to take out one Mewtwo and Mew because the other person played a Dedenne onto their bench, and they played a Mewtwo, the non-GX one, onto their bench to put a Welder back on top. And that's my other 3 prizes. Easy. Don't need 270 damage, just need to do 160 and 120 or 130 or something. So that could be a big problem with a lot of these decks. Yeah. So I would say ability reliance and then sort of subsequently a Dedenne reliance is a big weakness of this deck. And then the last weakness is charms, right? The 2 decks that won the last 2 like US regionals, Atlantic City and Knoxville, I don't believe that the players who piloted them really faced very many, if any, Guardians. I know that Danny said that he was lucky and didn't hit any Guardians. But if you look at their decks, they have 0 answers to Guardian. Just none. So if you face a Guardian with their builds, it's an auto loss. Because they put a Psychic Charm on, assuming they get that, and then you're just like, well, scoop, done. And now let's talk about, you know, moving into the future. With cards like Reshiram and Zekrom and Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia coming out that have fairy weakness because they're dragon types, and End's Resolve coming out, which will help dragon types, you might see even more Guardians coming out, whether that's in cups or big events, just because they're going to hit for weakness against these really powerful tag teams. So the more Guardians you have, the worse it is for Mewtwo and Mew. So yeah, I think that's going to be a big problem for them moving forward. So those are the weaknesses. And now if we start talking about the future in totality, not just a couple of the new tag teams coming out, I think we can talk about a bit of that ability reliance and a card that's going to help them that I think you'll start seeing in decks moving forward. I think, as I said, you're ability reliant, and there's a card that's coming out, Mimikyu, which I think it's any GX Pokemon that have damage counters on it no longer have abilities. So if somebody is playing a Mimikyu, Shrine of Punishment. You just Shrine of Punishment, put Mimikyu down. All of a sudden, all of your Mewtwo and Mews on the bench and in the active, have no abilities. They cannot attack. You have to heal that damage before that card can do anything. Or you have to figure out a way to knock out that Mimikyu with some other Pokemon or your GX attack and gust it up somehow. So yeah, that's really bad. Mimikyu is going to be a thorn in the side of this deck, which is why I think that Mewtwo and Mew GX is going to have to play another supporter that isn't Welder, but it's actually going to be a good thing for a variety of reasons. And I think that card is going to be Guzma and Hala. So the tag team supporter card coming out, it allows you to search your deck for a stadium, which is always a good thing. And if you discard 2 cards, you can grab a special energy and a Pokemon tool card. Now, how does that help with Mimikyu? Well, you can go grab something like a Stealthy Hood, which would stop the effect of Mimikyu from affecting your Mewtwo and Mew GX. I think that running 2-3 Stealthy Hoods is going to be commonplace in Mewtwo and Mew if Mimikyu has any success, and I think it probably will. So I think you're going to see a lot of Mewtwo and Mew decks running Guzma and Hala. The benefit there also is that for going up against Reshiram and Zekrom, which does exactly the amount of damage that you need to knock out a Mewtwo and Mew, you may also see, Mewtwo and Mew decks playing Choice Helmet, just to give them that extra little bit of resistance against that 270 hit attack. You may also, with Guzma and Hala, you'll see things like Weakness Guard Energy instead of Jirachi being run in all of these decks. There's no need for Jirachi anymore. So you'll see Weakness Guard Energies. You might see Rainbow Energy versions of Mewtwo and Mew coming out, or Unit Energy versions of Mewtwo and Mew, because you can go grab a special energy when you need it. So I think Guzma and Hala is going to be something that will make this deck able to survive a couple of the new cards coming out, as well as some of the cards that are currently in existence, like all the Malamar decks that hit you for weakness. So that's one future card that I think helps it against other future cards and current cards. The next card that I think that Mewtwo and Mew should start running is Silvally GX. And I think it needs to run Silvally GX instead of all 4 Dedennes. Maybe you run 1 or 2 Dedennes, but I think you could see a version of Mewtwo and Mew that doesn't run any Dedennes. The reason for that is that with Great Catcher coming into the format, and with other decks running Naganadel GX, Dedenne is an easy target. 160 HP is almost nothing, and you give up 2 prizes with that. So you could put a Dedenne on the bench, but Great Catcher just means your opponent with 1 card and then discarding 2, but 1 card is all you need to do it, really, can go and just take 2 prizes easily. And Dedenne is a one-time use. So it takes up bench space for a one-time use. Yes, you can get some of the cards you need, but there's a lot of collateral damage usually with Dedenne. You can get a couple of the cards you need, but you're also getting other cards like Energy Recycle Systems or Switches or some other cards into your discard that you would rather not. So I don't think that Dedenne is going to be as necessary. Here's another reason. Cards like Guzma and Hala, in order to get the special energy and the Pokemon tool card, you have to discard 2 cards. Those 2 cards can be Pokemon. So it has discard synergy already. You don't need that much discard synergy. And what Silvally does, and its benefit, is assuming you're running Guzmas and Halas on top of Welders, you'll be discarding cards certain turns. You'll have less than 5 cards in hand. And Silvally GX allows you to draw until you have 5 cards in hand once per turn. You can choose when you want to do that. So it's a good draw engine that is reusable over turns. And what it also has is 210 HP, which if you look around the format, yes, Pokemon can do 210 damage, but it's not as easy as 160. Doing 210 damage usually means that the Pokemon that you're up against are using attacks that they can't use the next turn, like Reshiram and Charizard. They are using multiple things like Electro Powers, or they're using their GX attack to take out this Pokemon. Which, if you're making them waste lots of resources or put themselves into a position where they are not able to use that attack the next turn, that is a positive for you ultimately, because they're going out of their way to take that out just to stop you from drawing an extra 2 or 3 cards per turn. So I think Silvally GX, yes, you'll need a couple of type nulls as well. It will take up more space in your deck, but I think it will be a more valuable way to draw cards, and that plus Guzma and Hala will get you all the discard and draw synergy that you need and make you actually less reliant on Welder, which it's ultimately, you know, one of the potential challenges of this deck bricking is that, you know, you don't hit Welder a couple turns and you lose. So those are the 2 cards, Guzma and Hala and Silvally GX, that I think are going to answer a lot of the questions about how does this deck survive into Cosmic Eclipse? How does this deck survive things like Fairy getting more popular, and thus Fairy Charms getting more popular, the Mimikyu, etc. So hopefully this video has been helpful, enlightening to any of you who are either not familiar with the Mewtwo and Mew GX decks, or are familiar, but maybe we're curious as to how this deck is going to perform and should you build it, you know, a month from now or 2 months from now when the new set comes out. I think it's going to be a great deck moving forward. I'm really excited to continue building it. I actually have gotten kind of bored, to be honest, with the Mewtwo and Mew builds, as crazy as it sounds, because all the deck lists are relatively the same. And I think things like Guzma and Hala and Silvally, just shaking it up again is always nice. But thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about Mewtwo and Mew, the decks that have been built out there. And definitely subscribe if you like this kind of stuff. So thanks again, and I will catch you in a later episode. Carpe Awesome.